having an expensive or exclusive car is a status symbol for many people. It's a sign that you're doing well in life. Every car you're about to see in this video is completely unique, but they're not the sort of vehicles that celebrities would pay millions of dollars to own. Nor are they the kind of cars you drive down the freeway. They're simply the most incredible cars in the world. This stylish vehicle looks like something out of the Victorian era, but it isn't. It's an ultra-modern Japanese take on the idea of an electric car. The single wheel at the front looks a little 1980s, but the vehicle, which is known as a Meguru, is actually styled on the design of a rickshaw. The shape will be familiar to anybody who's ever ridden in a rickshaw, but the comparison goes a lot further than just the shape. The floor is made from bamboo, and the doors are the same kind of reinforced paper you'll find in Japanese fans. You might be inclined to think that the car would be throwaway and disposable as a result, but you'd be wrong. It's the product of the Yodogawa Group and Kinki Knives working together, and neither company has a track record of making joke products. The Meguru runs on batteries, but only has a range of around 25 miles. That makes it more of a short-range gimmick vehicle than a practical method of transport. But it's still like nothing else we've ever seen. Flying cars are an inevitability. The technology to create them has existed for years. It's regulation and practicality which have prevented them from becoming commonplace. One day soon, the skies will be full of them. Perhaps the PAL V Liberty will be the most popular choice among the first generation of flying car drivers. It was showcased at a special event in Geneva in 2018, and it's ready to fly as soon as the authorities granted permission to. The PAL V Liberty is a gyrocopter with 2 seats, 3 wheels, and helicopter blades to be deployed to take it into the air. Only 90 of them are scheduled to be built, and they won't come cheaply. The model shown in Geneva will cost $600,000 per buyer, and a later Sport edition planned, which will cost $400,000. Anybody with a driving license is welcome to buy one to drive on the road, but you'll have to have a formal pilot's license if you intend to fly it. A car that can fly is impressive, but the hype runner looks at the idea of a flying car and laughs. That's because a hype runner can drive, fly, and also swim. The vehicle is a Russian invention and has come from the talented mind of Alexander Bygok. The designer's normal occupation is designing aircraft. Perhaps most shocking of all is the speed in which he built the prototype of the Hype Runner. People have been trying to design a vehicle like this for decades. Bygok took his vision from a design on his computer screen to the reality of a working prototype in less than 1 month. The range of the electric vehicle is impressive. It can drive on roads for 180 miles without requiring a charge. Or alternatively, it can fly 280 miles in fair weather conditions. The whole machine weighs only 250 pounds, less than a large human being. Although Bygok hopes that a commercial use will be found for his creation, he also believes that emergency services could make good use of it. It could, for example, be used to rescue people stranded in the middle of an ocean, or trapped high up a mountain. German truck manufacturer Adler already had a reputation for quality by the time the Second World War began. It was no surprise that the German government began commissioning them to make special vehicles during the 1940s. One of the most specialized of the vehicles the company created during those years was the Adler SD-KFZ 325, a towing truck designed for use on military airfields. Not only was this car supposed to evacuate damaged planes from the battlefield, it was also designed to level out a runway so other planes could take off smoothly. Adler already had a basis for their innovative design. They used elements of their equally experimental Lauster LW3 heavy tractor as a template. With rear-driving wheels that measured more than 9 feet in diameter, this Adler machine was a monster. It weighed over 7,500 pounds. You wouldn't want to try to park this car on your driveway. It was half tractor and half steamroller. Sending human beings through minefields in a combat situation is a terrible idea. It should only be done as a last resort. The British Army has a solution that is far superior to relying on careful footwork to get through a minefield. They send in a Trojan armored vehicle of the kind which is currently employed by the Royal Engineers. The vehicles, which are referred to within the military as AVREs, are built around the chassis of a Challenger 2 tank, only with a hydraulic arm where the main armament would normally be. The arm serves multiple purposes, including dropping brushwood to firm up the ground and moving obstacles out of the way. As for the landmines, a plow on the front either pushes them out of the way or detonates them. These powerful armored units can soak up the impact of an exploding mine with no trouble. AVRE units have been available to the Army since 2007 and first saw action in Afghanistan in 2009. Almost everything you need to know about the Antarctic snow cruiser is contained in its name. It was a snow cruiser and it operated in the Antarctic. The name alone wouldn't give you a sense of the scale of this epic cold weather transport solution, though. Developed in 1939, this giant automobile was supposed to be a long-term answer to the problem of transporting both objects and people through the Antarctic during the U.S. expedition, which lasted from 1939 to 1941. The man who designed it was Thomas Poulter, who had experienced the harsh conditions of the Antarctic firsthand in 1934, and so knew the challenges of the terrain. Unfortunately, though, the machine had to be designed on dry, safe land. As keen as Poulter's memory was, he couldn't accurately replicate Antarctic conditions for test runs. The tracks were more suited for marshland than snow and ice, and struggled for grip. It completed its first mission, but then was abandoned in Antarctica in 1940. It was found again in 1946 and found to be still operational, and then uncovered once more in 1958, but hasn't been seen since. How's your French? If it isn't too bad, you'll already know that Louf translates into English as the egg. One look at this concept car tells you why designer Paul Arzens named it Louf. If it was any more egg-shaped, you'd have to put it in a cup. As well as being a stylish car, it was light years ahead of its time. This is an electric car that was running on the streets of Paris in 1942, and one that was born out of necessity. During 1942, France was occupied by the Germans, and the Germans didn't allow French citizens to use gasoline. That meant very few people could drive, and so Arzens created the little egg car as a way around the problem. As well as the electric engine, Arzens used plexiglass in the windows and doors, which was revolutionary in car design at the time. At its top speed, it could reach 50 miles per hour. Here's another startling French concept car, the Helicron. It's now generally accepted that the combustion engine is the best way of powering an automobile, although electric vehicles are slowly catching up in terms of efficiency. Back in 1932, when the Helicron was invented, people weren't as convinced about what makes for a good engine as they are today. That's why this car ran with a propeller. There are some advantages of the propeller system. There's no transmission, for example, and acceleration is achieved with a lever, as opposed to a throttle pedal. The prototype Helicron was abandoned for unknown reasons shortly after it was built, but was found again in a French barn in the year 2000. Restoration expert lovingly repaired the 70-year-old car and got it up and running again, and even received a license from the government, allowing it to be driven on the roads. It does have a significant safety issue, though. If a passenger walks into the giant propeller at the front, they're likely to be sliced into pieces. The Dymaxion car was the kind of vehicle that could only have come from the mind of an eccentric genius, and Buckminster Fuller fits that bill perfectly. The madcap American inventor caused quite a stir at the 1933 World Fair with his prototype machine, which he claimed was the first step toward developing a car capable of flight. It was certainly an unconventional vehicle to look at. The chassis was lightweight and hinged. It had only 3 wheels. and it was almost tube-shaped. With steering happening via the third wheel at the rear of the car, it could turn itself very sharply at low speeds. It wasn't quite as sharp when you accelerated, though. Back in the 1930s, car designers didn't have the same understanding of how lift affects the chassis of a car that we do today, so the Dymaxion became a liability at high speeds. It also didn't cope very well in strong winds for the same reason. Shortly after the car was launched, one of Fuller's prototypes was involved in a fatal accident. He elected not to build any more after that. Criminals never stop innovating, and therefore the police can't stand still either. Here's one of the latest tools available to the police forces in the United States of America: the Rook. At its core, this is a Caterpillar vehicle like any other created by the famous company. The standard Caterpillar has been heavily modified by the Ring Power Corporation, though, and is now ideal for police use. Whether it's rescuing hostages or taking control of a riot, the Rook is the machine your local law enforcement agency wants. Inside the armored vehicle are night vision and thermal imaging technology, panoramic cameras, and a receiver, which enables the vehicle to be controlled remotely if necessary. There are also numerous different attachments that can be fitted to the Rook, meaning it can adapt to the purpose it needs to serve. The most devastating of them is the hydraulic battering ram, which can breach almost any substance known to humankind. When you see the F-60 conveyor bridge, you'll think we've made a mistake. This is a video about cars. So why is a massive bridge that looks like the Eiffel Tower lying on its side included? The answer is that almost unbelievably, this bridge can move. That makes it the largest moving vehicle ever built in the history of the world. This colossal structure was built to work at a coal mine near Lichterfeld in Germany, and did most of its heavy-duty work during the 1990s. Back then, the behemoth could shift 90,000 cubic feet of coal every hour, and move it along its 1,600-foot frame with no problem at all. Sadly, the mine is closed now, and so the bridge doesn't have much in the way of a purpose. The local tourism industry is trying to provide it with one, though. Tour guides now escort people up the structure to the viewing platform, where tourists can admire the view from 250 feet up. At night, it's lit up to make a pretty addition to the Lichterfeld skyline. Lutz Kalani spent his whole life building experimental vehicles, from the 1960s through to the first 10 years of this century. The finest and most distinctive-looking vehicle he ever made might well be the 2002 Spitzer Silo truck, which takes a few design elements from nature and combines them with Mercedes-Benz engineering. The Spitzer Silo is based on the Mercedes Actros, but with the cab adjusted to allow for much more space, and a new 340 horsepower engine fitted. He specifically selected gray to be the color of his prototype car, because he intended for it to be seen as a whale on wheels. When you look at it from the side, you can see what he means. It does look like it could float through the water. Equally, it looks like the kind of futuristic vehicle which could float above the land on a cushion of air, and perhaps even take to the sky. It's sleek, it's aerodynamic, and it has more storage space than a standard Actros unit. It's a design triumph in every way, and we'd love to see someone pick it up and start mass producing it. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, and you will be the first to know when a new video comes out. Thank you for watching, and see you soon.